This entrepreneur started her first business at age 5, and now she's building a flight simulator to teach kids how money really works. Hello, my name is Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I'm here to help you leave the system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your kids back. Welcome to the School to Homeschool podcast. Hello, my friends. I'm very excited today to have Lucy Taylor on the podcast. Lucy is a student entrepreneur at the University of Austin and founding member of the UATX Alpha Fellowship. As part of the inaugural class, Lucy is passionate about innovation, both in education and entrepreneurship. She's been on the Fox News Will Kane show and other interviews to share how UATX and Aurum, which we'll talk about, are challenging the status quo of universities and personal finance education. Through several ventures, Lucy learned financial literacy and cultivated a passion for entrepreneurship. These experiences revealed an industry-wide flaw. Personal finance education is neglected, uninspiring, and even predatory. Lucy built Aurum to target this, transforming finance into a system to optimize rather than a set of rules to obey. So, Lucy, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Janae.
So first of all, when you initially told me that you went to the University of Austin, I was like, wait, don't you mean the University of Texas at Austin? So let's talk about that for just a second. Tell us about the University of Austin.
Yes, it's a brand new university founded in 2021. We're in downtown Austin, and we have a big focus on the liberal arts and entrepreneurship.
Excellent, excellent. And you are part of the inaugural class then.
I am.
Very, very fun. Okay, so Lucy, let's talk about your background a little bit. And then I want to talk about what you're doing with this program called Aurum. So rewind, tell us about you.
Yeah, so my kind of entrepreneurial journey started at age 5, believe it or not. We had some chickens, and my dad was like, let's start selling the eggs to the neighbors and have you handle that. So I was like, great, I can do that. So I collected the eggs. I went around to everyone's stores and knocked on their doors. And I learned a lot about revenue versus profit and kind of taking care of the chickens and how to do my little neighborhood route to sell my eggs. And then that kind of graduated to when I was age 10 and I started selling books on Amazon. I had my own little business where I got my mom's books, priced them accordingly, wrote descriptions, and sold them to people. And then that kind of also graduated to when I was in high school. I had a little vending machine business, and I also did some online business stuff as well. And here I am today, very focused on business. I love entrepreneurship and I love financial optimization.
So my question is because your focus is both entrepreneurship and financial literacy. Why did you decide to look into financial literacy? Like what piqued your interest with that?
Weirdly enough, it was math. So I mentioned my upbringing with entrepreneurship, and I also really loved math starting around middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And what throws some people off, I tell them I love calculus. And they're like,
Mm.
what? Why did you like calculus so much? And I was like, because of the optimization, like it was so interesting. And this is going to sound really nerdy to watch the equations just distill down into something very simple. And I think it's the same way with personal finance. Personal finance is just applied numbers. It's all math. There are some behavioral aspects, there are some people aspects, but it's math in the most applied way possible. And so through kind of my entrepreneurial journey and my love of math, I was like, wait, this could totally apply to personal finance. And so I started getting into it. And then I've always loved psychology as well. And so there's a ton of psychology with personal finance. And all of those combined, I was like, this is a very interesting problem and I'm trying to solve it now.
I love that. So, and you ended up going to a private school for high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you take any personal finance classes in high school?
We had no personal finance classes, but there was a big emphasis on getting involved. So every year was kind of a different educational emphasis. So in like first grade, we learned about ancient Egypt. We learned about Texas history in second grade. And then it kind of went on throughout my elementary education. And so we had these days where we dress up as monks or dress up as medieval people or go out in the garden and, harvest vegetables and stuff like that. And that kind of upbringing was very interesting to me in allowing me to actually apply what I had learned. So we didn't learn a whole lot of personal finance, but the emphasis was on applying what you learn and kind of on stewardship as well.
Hmm. What do you mean? I
Well, the
love I
schools,
love stewardship, but keep
yes,
going.
yes. So Regents is a K through 12 classical Christian school,
Mhm.
and the name actually comes from the idea of a regent, which is someone who rules in place while the ruler or king is away. And so they've tried to apply that idea to all endeavors of life.
Hmm.
So while God is in heaven, we act as his regents on earth, and we lead people to spiritual, I guess, to heaven essentially, and we kind of rule in his place, acting as Christians within the world and acting as leaders specifically.
Love that. Hence being wise stewards.
Exactly.
So with that, let's talk about Aurum for a second. Or is it Aurum or Aurum?
You can say either one. I say Orum.
So Aurum. First of all, how'd you come up with the name Aurum? And then let's talk about what it is.
Yeah, so the name actually means Latin for gold.
Mhm.
And when I was kind of thinking of a name, I was like, I want something that's grounded in truth, that's not kind of like volatile, like you think of finance traditionally,
Mhm.
something that's backed and legitimate and real. And so gold was kind of the thing that kept coming to mind. Gold has historically been a sign of wealth, not only of wealth, but of real significance.
Mhm.
So I came with that name and I was like, this is great. I love it. And it stands for exactly what my brand is supposed to be: trustworthy, reliable, and grounded in truth.
I love that. Okay, so now what is it?
Yes. So I kind of like to talk about it as the flight simulator for personal finance.
Mhm.
So we have three distinct phases. The first of these is a game phase where students will enter into a virtual world. They'll play in this economy with their friends. And through AI, through gamification, they will learn personal finance in a low stakes and fun way. And then they will graduate into the teen phase, which is phase two. And in this phase, they're starting to earn their own money for the first time, save up for a car, maybe save up for college. And so they need the tools that can help them do that. And so, kind of the game phase of Aurum starts to fade away, and the real life tools start to come and be more present. And
Mhm.
so, Aurum kind of evolves into a dashboard and an AI mentor for the student. As they progress in the game, they begin to acquire these skills more and start to kind of think like an entrepreneur. That graduates into the teen phase where students are making money for the first time. They're handling their own budgets and they're probably saving up for a car and managing their money in their own specific way.
Mhm.
And so, what Orum is trying to do at that point is bridge the gap between game like play and
Mhm.
real application. So, Orum fades kind of a real life advisor AI dashboard for the student to help them navigate real life money for the first time.
Wow.
And then as they become more advanced, they can graduate into the adult phase, which is full scale financial modeling and projection software that is kind of led by AI, and it's meant to suit adult needs. So, mortgages, retirement, all of these big, high stakes financial decisions. That is phase three.
So this is all on one computer game, is that correct?
Correct. It's one platform, three distinct phases.
Very cool. What made you decide to create this?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, entrepreneurship played a big role in my childhood.
Mhm.
And managing my money for the first time was a little bit like hectic. I was like,
Mhm.
this is a lot to look at one time, especially with taxes and allocating money to different use cases, right? And so I was like, I wish I had something that was a personal finance advisor just for me,
Mhm.
something that was tailored to my needs, that knew what I needed to do, that had my goals in mind, and could effectively help me allocate my money to all these different things. And so that's where I came up with the idea for Orum.
Were you in high school when you came up with it, or is this something that's been since you started university?
It's been much more recent. Yeah, it's been
Mhm.
within the last 2-ish years while I'm at college that I've come up with this.
Very cool. So why a game?
Yeah, I think where this came from was one specific insight I had, which is that money is a game in and of
Mhm.
itself. It has set rules, there are set strategies, and there are set winning conditions. However, it's not like a game in that you don't get to respawn. It's
Hmm.
much, much, much higher stakes than any traditional game that you and I would just log in on and play.
Yeah.
And everyone has to play this. You can't opt out of the system. You're forced to play the game of money. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's totally a game, and that's how we need to teach it. And, besides gamification having other advantages like helping with effectiveness, helping with motivation and engagement, I think it all started from this one insight that money is a game.
That's awesome. One of the things I think was interesting is that you, from a young age, were interested in entrepreneurship. But I think that the early progressive educators and the industrial titans did a number on us in the early 20th century and in turning us into employees and having this mindset. And so I want to talk a little bit about the employee mindset and the compliance trap that we're in. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think kind of a broad acknowledgement that a lot of people have is that public schools are structurally designed to produce compliant workers. It's like you sit in class, you get your grade, you don't really work with anyone, you don't challenge the system, you don't have new ideas, you just kind of respond. Like
Mhm.
school comes at you and you're expected to know the questions and know how to respond, but it's all responding. There's no really proactive mindset that's taught in school. And so, unlike that, what we want to do is comply, or not comply, but create a stewardship model where kids take kind of authority of their own finances, where they say, okay, this is what I've been given and this is how I'm going to multiply it, rather than, oh, this is the money I have and here's how I'm going to react to market forces and credit card debt. I'm just going to pay off my bills and pay my taxes and go about my life. I think it's much more fulfilling to create something rather than to consume. And so we want to apply that to finance.
I love that. Well, and you think about it, like the very first thing that's said biblically is in the beginning God created, and we are meant to be creators. And yet so many of us have stepped back and are okay to let life happen to us as opposed to going, oh, I can create, I can do, I can make. Um, let's talk about the owner mindset. How does Aurum help create an owner mindset over an employee mindset?
Absolutely. So a lot of personal finance modules that you'll see are just you clicking through
Mhm.
the lesson. You don't own anything, you're not building anything. You're just, like I said, consuming the content, being a good responder to the content instead of actually making something of it. And so with Aurum, specifically what we can do with a game that these other modules can't really do is allow the student to build up some sort of thing that they own within the game, right? Assets. They can buy this business, they can unlock this skin, they can get the XP for this quest, you name it. All of these things are unlocked by a game format that are not currently in just a passive consumption module type of format. And
Mm.
so within a game, when you're able to accumulate resources and then grow those resources, it actually activates a huge psychological motivator, which is I have done this and it's visual and I can see it. I can see my progress and I'm building on it more. So that's super powerful, especially for a young kid.
I love that. Well, and I think even for adults, I had a friend several years ago who had been creating a Smurf village, and she was a mom of 3 kids. And she's like, I have a guilty pleasure. I've been building this Smurf village and I've unlocked these. And I was like, what? Are you serious? And she's like, don't tell anybody. But you want to see my Smurf village? There's something, even in a virtual world, that's exciting about, again, going back to that creation, that we're creating something, or we're, like um, that we're building something. And when it's real, it matters far more, like, so I like that you've done that flight simulator experience so that kids can go, oh, okay, if it feels good like this, how is it going to feel when I'm actually doing it for real? That's pretty amazing. So let's talk, because there's lots and lots of curricula out there for personal finance. What have you found has been lacking in those?
Yes. So in my research, I've kind of discovered four main categories of personal finance education platforms. And this does not include learning through peers or parents or social media because that's pretty pervasive and it's permanent, it's hard to track. So the four categories that I've personally found have been first, a classroom. So
Mm-hmm.
your personal finance class, just lecture and test method. The second has been what I call niche mini games. These are like budgeting games, running your lemonade stand, a specific small game tailored at kind of driving home one concept. Thirdly, this is kind of an outlier, but sandbox economy games. So games that are like Roblox, Minecraft, The Sims. This is actually a way that people learn financial literacy. It's a real economy, but it's within a game, and people are very intrigued by this. They love playing these games and they do learn personal finance this way. And then lastly, I have what I call comprehensive simulations. And these are kind of the more new ed tech style games. Well, if you can call them that. Basically, it's a full scale platform, kind of like Google Classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and it's implemented in a classroom, and students can buy things, they can pay rent, but it's all kind of virtual. And so I think the biggest thing that I found that is lacking is fragmentation and obviously effectiveness. Personal finance is not known for being a well taught subject. So all of these kind of have their own way of being taught, but there's no holistic acknowledgement that humans are complex creatures and we have personal motivations and drives, and there are certain ways to do that correctly and certain ways to not.
Yeah. So then you came up with Aura. Where are we? Where are you in the developmental process with Aura?
Yeah, so I currently have a prototype. Um, as you maybe know, game development is a big process. There are so many game development platforms, and it takes years to build a full game, especially with mine with the complex AI components and 3D um, aspects of the game. It's a huge undertaking, and so that will be probably launched within the next year or so.
Mm-hmm.
I have software engineers I'm talking to, game developers, and that is kind of the longer scale vision. Something specific that I'm working on right now that should launch in the next few months is a more niche application of that, and it's meant to facilitate stewardship between students and their families. So, a more specific need being met specifically with high net worth families and trying to train their kids to be better stewards of their money.
Oh, I love that. Now, you brought up that it's like a flight simulator, but for wealth. Why do you think it's dangerous to learn finance without a simulator?
Yeah, it's super dangerous. We have to acknowledge that failure is just a part of learning. It's part of every way that you'll learn. You're going to fail at some point. And so when people have not been exposed to these ideas, except when they get into college, they have access to a credit card, they have potentially student debt, and they're living on their own for the first time. That is super dangerous. They've never been exposed to these ideas before. They've never gotten the reps in. So they're just kind of exposed to all of the predatory scams and the nature of personal finance with all of the complexities. And they fail in real life as opposed to failing earlier in a game.
Let's talk for a little bit about, because there are personal finance classes taught in schools, some schools. In a few schools, there's personal finance taught in a few schools. And then I know lots of homeschooling parents that try to teach personal finance as well. Where do you feel like they're falling short right now?
Definitely in terms of engagement and long-term transfer. So there's actually a very interesting study that I came across that showed that traditional interventions only explain 0.1% of long-term behavioral variance. And that's for a whole personal finance class. And then there's also, I think, another study by the same authors that showed all of that kind of learning that you accumulate in that class depletes to zero within 20 months. And so there's horrible transfer. And quite frankly, students are like, they don't care. It's very boring to sit in a class where someone's lecturing you on retirement. No one likes that. Even the teachers feel unprepared. So there's a lack of transfer, there's a lack of efficacy, there's a measurement failure in that we measure these things by standardized tests, and that is not how real life works. So many issues that can be solved by behaviorally applied design and AI.
Nice. Now let's talk about AI for a second, because I do use AI, um, and I do have concerns about AI, namely, who's programming it and what agenda does the person programming it have, when they're putting forth their AI. And I think that's the biggest concern I have about it in education as well, is like, for those that are using AI, who's programming it, and what are they going to, how is that going to influence the learning? So when you're using AI, how is it being used and who's programming it? That's my question.
Sure. Yeah. The AI will be personally trained by Aurum. So it's not going to be just like a layer of ChatGPT or something.
Mhm.
And so we're kind of programming it. And the way we're doing it, we're not doing open web scraping. It's not
Okay.
just pulling all of these ideas from the internet, all the financial scams and high risk things that influencers may be saying to do. It's licensed, grounded financial IP. So we take trusted ideas from authors like maybe Clark Howard, maybe Robert Kiyosaki, even though I have my doubts with him. And so we accumulate this list of correct financial ideas that are not, based in save, 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 or based in just risk all your money all the time, but math. It's based in math, and then we license it, and that's what the AI is trained on. And so, with that, I mean, personal finance is hard to kind of skew an agenda with, because
Yeah.
it's the way I see it, it's all just math, it's optimization in its purest form. And so, I mean, the biggest issue would be corporations being predatory with that. So, like
Mhm.
banks, for example, or schools just mandating based on compliance. So, we use the AI that's trained on this licensed IP, and then that combined with math is how we deliver it to students.
Are you hoping to work with homeschooling families as well, or have it available to homeschooling families as well? Or is the objective really to get it in the school system? Or let's talk about, like, your ultimate goal or plans for that.
Absolutely, yeah. It'd be great to have it in schools, but primarily we're looking at families. I mean, schools are plagued by bureaucracy, as I'm sure you understand. And
Oh, I
it's very
know.
hard for someone like me. Yes, for sure. It's hard for someone like me who has these more innovative ideas to break into the school environment and tell them that they should trust me, right? And so if I'm able to show that this works objectively and get families convinced by that and show that this actually helps your student succeed financially, you don't have to go through the school. I think it's much more valuable to facilitate these conversations within families than just implement them in schools.
Okay, and this might be a little bit premature, but this is something that a question I would have is like, what something like Aura, what would the cost be for a family to use that or to implement it? And how long could the game be played, if you will?
For sure. We're still working out the specifics, but it would most likely be a subscription based model. We wouldn't want to do ads or affiliates or anything like that. Like,
Mhm.
for example, NerdWallet and Credit Karma, you can't trust them because they sell to you based on who the highest bidder is. They're selling you the credit card that was recommended to them and who is willing to pay the highest price for that. And so we don't want to do that. We want to have licensed, valuable, trusted IP. And, obviously that comes at a cost. So we're thinking of just doing a subscription model, making it as affordable as possible to cover our overhead costs
Mhm.
and get this out to as many families as possible.
Very nice. Now, since Aura's not out yet, what do you suggest? What are the best ways for families to teach personal finance, um, as low stakes as possible?
Yes, for sure. I would say number one, facilitating these conversations, having conversations with your kids and letting them kind of know what happens at a cash register, what happens when you're paying the bill at a restaurant, how do things cost, what they cost and what kind of goes into that. Um, I think also letting your kid be as entrepreneurial as they can be. Like, I think that's a great thing to start teaching young because research shows that by age 7, your money mentality, as it is, your delayed gratification, all of that is largely established. And so, by helping kids get involved and facilitate a healthy mindset around money, I think that's definitely a good place to start.
I love that. I have my 13-year-old son decided to make a sourdough starter. He saw on YouTube like how do you make a sourdough starter? And then he started making sourdough and then started selling it to the neighbors. And now he has a little business going on and he's like, "Okay, I need to make this much money, so I'm going to have to make this, this many loaves. I know I'm going to sell them all." So um but I think it's great because when they're younger, the risk is not as high. If they start their
Exactly.
own business versus, oh my gosh, I want to start a business and yet still work a job as an adult, right? It's a better time for them to train. What's your end goal? What's your end
Yeah.
desire?
Yeah, I have two things I can say to that. One of them is kind of more of the corporate or I guess materialistic way, and then one of them is kind of the ultimate goal. So, first off, we want people to be entrepreneurs. We don't
Mhm.
want to teach personal finance from a compliance based standpoint where it's like, here's how you don't go into debt. No, we want to teach you how to become the best that you can be, how to live to the fullest. And for a lot of people, that involves freedom, and freedom comes from entrepreneurialism. Now that doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur. There's no reason that you could be a W-2 employee and not have an entrepreneurial mindset, because I think that is one of the biggest things that in the age of AI, in this kind of hectic job market, an entrepreneurial mindset is one of your biggest differentiators
Mhm.
and will help you the most. And so that's kind of the first thing. And then beyond that, we want people to be able to live abundantly.
Mhm.
That's something that goes beyond entrepreneurship. And money and life are so interconnected that financial flourishing goes along with, I guess, life flourishing. And so they're not explicitly connected, but they do influence each other. And so we want to drive home the idea that even if you're a successful entrepreneur, even if you have all the financial freedom that you could want in the world, you need to use that to its fullest extent. You need to live abundantly. That means spending time with your family. That means helping people out. That means taking that trip. It could mean whatever it means for you specifically, and it's not limited to just financial means.
I love that. So, and then as far as like, what has the reception been like? With Aura, have you done this within the university and has it been part of your program that you put this together? Or was it something that you're like, I think there's a need here and I can fill this need? How has that worked out?
Yeah, so at the University of Austin, we have what's called a Polaris project,
Mhm.
and it's something that is kind of the culmination of our entire education here. It is an ambitious project, whether that be starting a business, whether that be writing a book or doing a senior thesis, or anything along those lines. It's definitely entrepreneurial. And so I was kind of thinking about this with that in mind, but I don't want it to just end when school
Yeah.
ends. I have a much grander vision for this. And like I was saying about my upbringing with entrepreneurialism, and I was like, I love math at the same time. How can I combine these two? And I think personal finance is a very interesting application of that combination. So that's how I came upon it. I don't want it to just be a school requirement, even though
Yeah.
that's nice, right? But I want it to go much further than that and extend beyond for the rest of my life.
I love that. One of the things that you said earlier that I thought was really fascinating was how you mentioned about calculus, that you loved calculus because you could get things to its simplest form. And yet I think um, most kids in school, we look at math, and I felt this way a lot. Like, why are we learning things that we don't necessarily need or will use in the future? Is it a waste of time? Um, what happened at school for you to be able to make that connection with calculus? Because I think that's a beautiful connection to have made. Was that something you came up with on your own, or was it the way that you were taught calculus? Like, what happened there? As a mom,
I
that
would,
makes me curious.
yeah, for sure. I would definitely say it was the way it was taught.
Hmm.
It was very applied and experiential.
Hmm.
And so that had a kind of impact on me and how I want to teach with Aurum is very experiential. So let's say with calculus, we were looking at, I don't know, derivatives. And it's like, what even is a derivative? A lot of kids don't care what that means. And they're just like, oh, this is what I have to, study for the test. But it's like, when you look at how applied that is and how universal it is, I think that's a very powerful insight. And it's definitely not of my own doing that I came up with this. It was the way it was taught for sure. So I think realizing all the connections that what you're learning has is very valuable.
Very nice. Now, so and when do you graduate? Like when's the end date for you?
2028.
Okay, so you got a couple years.
I do.
Very, very fun. What's something that I have not asked you that you wish I would have asked?
Oh man. I think I think the lens that which personal finance is taught. I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but a lot of people think it's so disconnected from behavior. I mean, they treat personal finance as a spreadsheet, as numbers, like I said, and it is a lot of that. It is kind of math in its most applied form, but there's so much behavior that goes into it. There's so much psychology and so much emotion, really. And people can't be boiled down to a spreadsheet. People can't be, optimized perfectly. That's not what we're trying to do with Aurum is kind of starve you out and make sure your finances are perfectly in order and, optimize. But there is a very harmonious balance between your finances working as they should and your life working as it should. And I think those are actually synchronistic and not kind of this divergence that everyone on social media acts like it is.
I love that. What's the last bit of advice that you would give to parents who are looking to teach their kids personal finance?
I would say get them excited about it.
Hmm.
Like, get them in a mood where they're like, oh, how can we turn this into a game? Because, like I said, it's a game. And so maybe whether that's starting your business and being like, can you hit this metric by this date? Like, are you able to do this? Can you optimize this? And, getting your kids engaged and learning about how it applies to their life. This goes along with so much research I've done on the importance of just in time education, of teachable moments, of learning when it's actually applied. And so I think one of the biggest issues that school has is this huge disconnect where it's like, we're going to teach you about this and it might be relevant in 20 or 30 years.
Maybe it
Yeah,
might be.
it might be. It might be. So I think getting your kids involved at a point where it really matters. So, like I said, when you're at a restaurant, have them help calculate the tip, have them help organize a grocery budget. All of these little things that they can do to get involved, and kids love being involved,
Yes,
right? This is the whole idea of Montessori education: is get your kid involved, get them doing these little tasks that they can do, because kids are actually much more capable than we kind of expect them to be.
Yeah.
So definitely get the kids involved and get them excited.
Well, and I found too, like with teenagers, when teenagers have a say and when they know that it's real life, um, they they'll take the bull by the horns. I say that just because I've been asked to run a camp, and I asked 4 teenagers to be assistants. And so at our first meeting, I was dumbfounded with the ideas and the spreadsheets that these 4 17-year-old girls came with and are like, okay, these are our ideas. And I said, wow, you guys have done a lot. And one of the girls said, sometimes I just wish adults would just ask, because I have so much in my head that I want to share, but I feel like we're always treated like you're not smart and we have to do things for you. And we want to be involved with real life decisions, with not just petty, like, oh, you take care of this little consolation decision, right? But real legitimate decisions and experiences. I find that over and over and over again, that the older that kids get, the more that they want to be responsible. And when it is tied to real life, it matters to them more. So that's, I mean, I love how you brought that up, that as a child you were like, "Oh, my dad is having me do this." And then as you got older, um, really sinking your teeth into those experiences because your dad gave you the opportunity to do big things. Lucy, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today. Please let us know when Aurum is released, because I think that is very, very exciting. If people are interested in this game or they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so you can sign up for the waitlist on my website. It's aurumfinancial.app. That's spelled AURUM financial.app. And that's where the waitlist kind of lives. And then if you'd like to follow me on X for continual updates and posting about kind of what we're doing with Aurum, I am Aurum Financial on X as well. So those are where you can
Fantastic.
find me and you can follow along for the progress.
Great. And I'll go ahead and, for those of y'all who are listening, we'll put the links in the description or in the show notes so you guys can look that up. So thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today. Mamas and papas, grandmas and grandpas, you are doing so much better than you think you are. We will talk next week.